Alright guys, got the Fox River here. This is in 3V. I'm going to take a look at a sapling push cut out here with some buddies this weekend. I think I'm going to do some candles tonight around camp. And this is, you'll see that this whole thing gives way because this is in a flood zone. So, you can see, no problem. I'm going to come up here closer to the camera and see if it... So, you can see compared to the knife thickness, decent sized sapling, nothing major, but I can use this for several things in camp. Probably go down to this end and make a camp candle. I also am 1 tent stick short because I'm using a lot more guy out points than I anticipated on my tarp, because it's actually getting down in the upper 20s and I want to lock that thing down as tight as I can. So Fox River 3V, very sharp, no problems with saplings, at least up to a size you would use for smaller things in camp. Alright, going to try some batoning now. We cut down some of this wood earlier with a hatchet, cut it up with a hatchet. So we've got smaller, kind of rounder pieces that I'm going to, attempt to baton here and see how that goes. It's still a little bit wet, but I think these knives will do okay with it. So we'll see how they go. Get rid of that wet outer bark. Just peels right off, but this inside is fairly dry. It's been getting pretty cold here at night. Last night got down to about 28, so when I have plenty of firewood. This one is much bigger in diameter. We'll see how the Fox River does. I'm going to stand up to start this one. Very clean cut, great job. Again, 3V, incredible steel. The tip, even though the Fox River has a very slender taper, hitting it with this pretty heavy piece of wood hasn't dinged it up at all. There's a little bit of residue I'm scrubbing off with my glove now from hitting it, but there's no damage to the steel really, and it's amazing stuff. And for a blade with that thin a geometry, that thin a steel, it actually did a very, very admirable job. I'm going to go ahead and quarter this. Stand up again. This is a taller piece. Again on this one. split here on this side. Again, great performance so far. The handle's a little bit more angular and in some ways not as comfortable. We're doing some task as say, you know, an Aurora or you know, maybe even a gunny, because the handle's very short and this sharp bit on the pommel can kind of get in the way at times. I don't find it a big deal, but it's something to take note of. In use. But so get rid of that. I'll do one more with the fox rubber here. Alright, so just a couple of minutes here. It did a really good job splitting this, better than I expected actually for such a, again, a thinner blade. It's not even as thick as even the Bushcrafter that I tried last time I was out, the Bark River 3V Bushcrafter. But anyway, so far a great knife. We'll put it through more of its paces later, but splits even bigger wood. It's even slightly damp and pretty dense. No problem. Wood that I batoned earlier. So here are the curls that the Fox River did, and again, this wood's still a little bit damp, so the curl's not as tight as they would be if the wood were drier. But after batoning and notching and doing all kinds of camp chores for 2 days, this knife is still very, very sharp. And the fine edge, the shallower convex edge just make it an awesome tool for feather sticking. So, and I've done feather sticking at home with this knife, just trying it out, and it does an incredible job. But you can see that it's going to handle the chore no problem. Again, it looks slightly different type of wood, and if it weren't as damp as it is, but outstanding job, Fox River. Alright, going to look at a little bit of notching green wood now with the box herber. Going to make a camp candle to test out tonight. And very sharp edge, very fine edge. And again, that's a pretty straight piece of wood. I can make tent sticks and a lot of stuff with that, so that'll be good. And we'll see how this goes. Sorry about that, I didn't realize that the camera was out of frame. So that's my initial split. Haven't removed the knife yet. Now I'm going to go the other way to quarter it. Try to get it pretty in the middle. This wood not quite as green as some other I've made, but we'll see how it goes. Last time I was out here, I did make some out of some pine resin. I'm not going to do that this time because I want to test these homemade citronella cotton ball, I don't know, candles, bug deterrent, fire starters, whatever you want to call them that I've made. See how they hold up. Basically took a citronella candle and ran it through a double boiler at home, or something that a makeshift double boiler. Melted the wax down and then put a cotton ball in it to soak it about maybe 40, somewhat maybe 50% of the way, and see how that would hold up. And in my test they've done really well, but I'm gonna see how they go. And since I'm just using this to be non-burning green wood for a candle, I'm not going to put any more stuff in here. I want to have room for the cotton ball. And so all I'm going to do now is hammer an angle at the base. Well, I'll go ahead and cut the rest. Again, the fine edge on this Fox River, very, very sharp. Doesn't have the splitting power of some knives, but I don't think you'd expect it to. And I'm just going to make a three-sided kind of sharpened point so that it's easy to get in the ground. So hopefully be able to get some nighttime footage of how those go. I'll probably do a bit here to show you what cotton ball looks like in just a second. Got a small Dakota stove going out here. I'm going to try to boil some water this way tonight. Some of the saplings that, push this down in there, I made a really small air hole because I didn't want to do anything too big, and I'm not going to feed anything through that. So I've just got, here we go, two of the pieces of the sapling that I took down earlier, the green wood, spanning the opening here to use as like a grate. I'm also adjusting the fuel down here in the bottom with a green stick. And then the great thing about at least small Dakotas is you don't need, as you can see, that flared right up. It was almost down to just coals. You just need some little bitty twigs like this and you get something burning like that. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it, but if you're not, basically there's, out of camera over here, there's an angled hole that goes down into this pit that actually feeds oxygen to the base of the flame. It's actually very efficient. good at keeping your fire contained. And of course, where I'm at, this ground's very sandy, and it does a good job of keeping the ground around it from catching on fire. So anyway, more uses for green saplings. Anyway, super useful. So turned out to be a fun night, but it's going to get really cold, so try to get something on brew before I completely lose the sun. Alright guys, here, hope you can see this. Water is pretty much boiling. You see the steam coming out, but I want to show you this real quick. This is one of the candles I fashioned earlier. Cotton ball. I don't know if you can hear that, but some melted citronella wax on the bottom and still kind of fuzzy on the top. And so what I want to do, I'm going to try to light this and hold it. Again, not a smart idea, but as you see, works pretty well like a candle. The bottom of it's wax, top of it just cotton ball, and then I'll hold it to the side and let the edges of the wax start melting and letting the wax kind of seep through the cotton ball there. And then put it in E. There it is, burning inside. So take it back over to camp. Once this starts to really melt, you see it kind of catching the backside of it now. Once the wax kind of liquefies, it really turns into a really good kind of a wick, and this will probably burn for, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes. So see how it goes. But there's one of our candles, and yep. Alright guys, back inside now. All I've done, per usual, is clean the blade from any residue, debris, sap, that kind of thing that might be on there. So when I check the blade edge, like I'm going to do here in a second, on paper, I know that all the results I'm getting are from the steel itself. A few comments before I do that. I'm looking at this, and there are really, really, really fine, I mean very fine, look like maybe micro rolls, where if you're looking blade on, this is obviously would be the two sides. Normally a chip would be something like this, where the steel has been removed or taken a serious nick. And what I'm talking about is maybe something more like this, little rolls, where the steel, instead of being in a really fine straight line, is maybe shifted slightly to the left or the right through impact. Considering how, I'm going to try to show this to you now, considering how fine this blade edge is, how thin the geometry is for a knife, that's maybe a good angle right there, of hard wilderness use, it actually held up very well. I didn't take any noticeable chips when I run my blade along, fingernail along the blade. I do feel a few little bitty imperfections, but as to be expected, I'd be astonished if a knife, after 3 days of slicing, notching, batoning, you name it, didn't have some sort of, noticeable use along the blade edge. When I get up here, if I shift this in the light, I'm going to try to show you along the edge here. Let me adjust this so I can see what I'm doing. Right in this area, you'll see that discoloration right there. Sorry, there we go, here, and maybe up here toward the belly. Sorry, this is upside down to me at this point. Let me try to get the refocus. Here we go. Again, right along down in here and up in here, you'll see that discoloration. Nothing major at all. Nothing major at all. And so I think it's going to maybe snag a little bit in a paper cut test. I haven't done it yet. But for outdoor purposes, this would still be considered a razor. I don't have any chips that I can notice at all. As I've said, that sometimes will happen. It happened with me on the Canadian Special. Even my Aurora took it, and even the 3V Bushcrafter from Bark River also suffered a micro ding chip, if you want to call it that, but this didn't, and this is a lot thinner geometry. So I can say that the 3V steel has continued to impress me in outdoor use. I'm not a hunter, as I've said before, but a buddy of mine who was actually with me on this camping trip is, and he reiterated how comfortable he thought this would be in dressing game, even as large as deer. For those of you who are hunters that may be watching this, check out Virtua Vice's channel. I'm sure you already have. He loves the the Bark River, Fox River for dressing deer. It's one of his favorite, maybe it's one of his top 3 knives. I know for a long time it was #1. This one, the Gunny, and maybe now the Canadian Special, or maybe some of the other ones are up in his top picks. So if you're into hunting, check out his channel if you haven't already, and you'll find that he's a huge fan of this knife as well. Does some of the best hunting knife reviews that I've been able to find on YouTube. But gonna just check it now again, office copy paper. This is not the definitive test for cutting at all, but it does allow me to feel any type of hesitation, snags, you name it. Again, where I expected, kind of up where the belly line is, it gets through it. I mean, this is the back part here that took the blunt of the work in the batoning. You can see is still very sharp. And there's a little bit of snag up at the front. This tells me, based on my experience, even with 3V, that should be restored with some stropping, maybe between 5 and 15 minutes, I'm not sure. So I'm gonna take that now and restore it and see how it performs, and I will let you know if I had to do any stonework at all, but I'm thinking stropping's gonna take care of this no problem. As a user, in the hand, very comfortable. One of my favorite Bark Rivers that's smaller by far. Love the overall, everything about this knife I love. If I could change one thing about it, it would probably be, I would wish this was rounded out a little bit more, like even the Sahara or the Aurora. It's a very sharp point right here. And when doing grip work like this, anything that causes vibrations to hit or forces the handle further up in the hand, this can be slightly uncomfortable, but it's nothing major. I would not use this knife because of that. Something I noticed again from using this in a camping, hiking, wood use situation. I am doing the Sahara in another video review to try to keep these shorter, but by comparison, you can see how more rounded this is. And even back there on that, still a little bit sharp, but not as sharp and as pointed as this one. This one actually hooks forward more than this one. You can see how this has this upswept kind of roll here. So it's a little bit better for locking it in the hand, but it can be sharp if you travel back on the handle at all. I will say this as well. For users with larger hands, this may not be the best choice because the distance from the finger area, it's not really a guard, but it sort of is right here near where a choil would be right here, to this part of the pommel of the knife is relatively short. I don't have big hands, but it's definitely from the knuckle of the index finger to the knuckle of the pinky. One of my friends who was the other guy on the camping trip who happens to have very big hands and currently uses the laser strike, he found this knife to be a little too small, a little too short. So something to consider. But I would say for small, medium to slightly above medium-sized hands, or if you have longer fingers but not a really wide, fat hand like I kind of have, you'd probably really like this knife. So those are user comments. Did everything I subjected to it. The only knife test that I didn't do this time was batoning through a larger tree, because the type of wood I was batoning in camp, off and on camera, the girth of it and the density of it left no doubt in my mind that this could handle that without a problem. I'm gonna try the resharpening out and let you know how it goes, guys. All right, guys, back in from resharpening it, and it performed very well. Maybe 5 minutes on the black compound, 1 to 2 minutes on the white pound to give it a nice polish, and all the imperfections that I could see, feel with my fingernail are definitely gone. If they're there, they're so minimal, I'm not noticing them, which is fine with me. This may be the best performance I've had from 3V yet. I know that knives have different geometries, and no two sets of wood batoning or feather sticking or chopping or anything like that are the same. But I was very pleased with how this performed. I did actually think that in this somewhat thinner geometry that it might take more edge imperfections than it did, maybe even some chipping, and there was no chipping at all. So delighted with how this performed. A few more comments before I get to the paper cut test and wrap this video up. I mentioned the pommel end of the knife, this upswept sharpness back here being annoying as far as being somewhat sharp. I did want to tell you that I did try this in camp, and I don't think I mentioned it before, that if you're doing a reverse hold, if you're holding the knife like maybe for a chest lever cut or something like this, that can be very annoying digging into the hand. And I'm just going to squeeze tight for a couple seconds, and you can see right there the mark that left in my hand. So if you're really into bushcraft and doing a lot of reverse holds, then you may find this not super comfortable. The bushcrafter with the rounded end of the knife is a lot more comfortable in a reverse hold, although I do like this curve to give kind of a forward angle at that point in the reverse. I ended up just batoning at an angle through the green wood when I needed to do that type of action. That's just what I chose to do this time around. So that's really the most annoying part of this knife, and something to consider if you're more of a bushcraft style user and that's something that would pertain to you. The other thing I wanted to mention was you can see these buff lines on the blade, especially up here toward the tip and the belly. And that is not from stuff that had happened in the woods. If you noticed it in the using segments, that you may have noticed it was already there. So I didn't want anybody to question what that was. I did have to stone sharpen this, but it was well before I took it into the woods. I was using it in the backyard one night, making feather sticks and doing like really small batoning pieces for the pit fire in the backyard. And I'd set it on the table outside, and someone bumped it, and it rolled off, and it actually fell belly first, blade down on the concrete. And so it did take a few little dings and some really small chips. So I did wind up having to stone sharpen it to get that out. And I left it as absolutely close to the original profile as possible. I just simply reversed sides until I had the minimum amount of steel removed, and then just, you know, sharpened it back up through the chaucer and chopped in stones to get it back to usable. And it is crazy sharp. My experience continues to be with 3V that once it does get taken on the stones, even just minimally, the sharpness potential of the steel really comes out. So I didn't have a true factory edge on it when I took it into the woods. Then again, I never do, because I almost always get to use them at home in some small degree before I go, and at least strop them back up. So just wanted to mention that. Here we go with the final cut test. Again, maybe 4 or 5 minutes on Bark River black compound, 1 to 2 minutes on white compound just to polish it up. And it is seriously like a razor right now. It's a very sharp knife. No problems at all, no snags. It just performed very well. If I haven't set it up to now, I can't remember. This is currently probably in my top 5 knives, maybe even in my top 3. Just really did enjoy using it. This one minute negative wasn't enough to turn me off to this knife at all. I really did love this knife. Again, check out Virtua Vice's channel if you're into hunting, especially larger game like deer. So again, check out his channel if you're a hunter, or if you just want a lot more information, especially on Bark River Knife. The dude's got hundreds of videos, and they're all worth watching. So anyway, I hope that somewhat helped you guys. Definitely a favorite of mine now. Well done, Bark River. Check out the Sahara video if you're interested. That's the other knife I kind of tested alongside this one to see my final thoughts on that one as well. Until next time, guys, I hope you have happy holidays, and God bless.